Incredible, explosive testimony today in the Alec Murdaugh double murder trial. Let's jump right into our trial analysis with our expert trial attorney, Carl B. Grant. Carl, I'm just going to ask you, of everything that we know about today, the testimony that we heard on the trial, what do you think was the most compelling moment?
The testimony that came from the young man who said he identified Alec Murdaugh's voice as the person on that Snapchat. He was familiar with it, a family friend, close family friend, very familiar with his voice, and he said 100%, no doubt, that was his voice. That was very powerful.
And I was going to say, let's bring our viewers up to speed. We actually have that audio that was played for the jury today. Let's take a listen.
Get back. Get back. Quit, Cash. Come. Quit. It's okay. Come here. It's not that bad. Come here, Cash. Shit. Come here. Post it. Cash.
Hey, he's got a bird in his mouth. Bubba.
Hey, Bubba.
That's a guinea.
This is a chicken.
Come here, Bubba.
Come here, Cash.
Come here, Bubba.
Cash. Quit.
You recognize your dog?
I do.
You recognize Paul's voice?
Yes, sir.
You recognize Maggie's voice?
Yes, sir.
You recognize Alec's voice?
Yes, sir.
100%?
Yes, sir.
Can you point out Alec Murdaugh, the person whose voice you recognize in this video in this courtroom, please?
Sitting right there in the gray jacket.
Please let the record reflect he's identified the defendant. Thank you, Mr. Gatson. Nothing further.
Wow, so it's interesting, Judy, because apparently this video was taken just moments and minutes rather before investigators determined that Paul and Maggie were killed. However, Alec Murdaugh has claimed that he was not there. He says that he was napping at the home. So how can you be napping between 8 and 9, but yet at 8:45 be present while this video was shot? How does this hurt the defense's alibi that Alec Murdaugh is innocent?
It sets up the prosecution's argument for the argument of what we call consciousness of guilt. In other words, why is the defendant lying? Because he's lying because he knew and he knows that he did something wrong. He knows that he's guilty, so that's why he's lying. And of course, if you set up your defense as alibi, now we have a witness who knows your voice, unless you have some logical explanation that through technology as to how your voice is heard, but you're not there. It's going to be a very difficult thing for the defense to explain.
And now we've heard from two of Paul's friends who have been lifelong childhood friends who have both testified that they recognize his voice 100%. So that testimony is on the record as well. Carl, we've talked about the question of whether Alec Murdaugh might testify. I mean, we have no idea, but in terms of looking at where the defense can go now, Dick Harpootlian in his opening statement seemed to allude to perhaps a defense that says, well, you know, he's just confused about the timeline because he was distraught. This was a traumatic event. But how do you prove that? How do you really get that before the jury without putting him on the stand?
It's going to be difficult to do so. But like I said earlier, it's challenging to put your client on the stand, but I have often done that. But the question becomes, how much risk does the defense want to take by putting this man on the stand, especially now we have two young people who have known him pretty much all of their lives, who have identified his voice to say, no, this guy was not sleeping. This is his voice that says he was there at that time a few minutes before this incident occurred.
Carl, yesterday you used a comparison of the crescendo in a song, just getting to that moment. Is this the prosecution's crescendo, their gotcha moment? And could this mean that we could be getting closer to the prosecution resting their case?
I think the opera singer is she may have already sung that note. I think this is it. I really do believe that this is the crescendo moment. And I think there's some additional evidence that may come out. We heard some testimony or heard some information at least about possible blood sample from a seatbelt. I haven't heard any testimony about that yet to come before the jury. So I'm not sure what they're going to do with that. But it seems to me that the prosecution is getting very close to resting their case.
So let me go back to the two-shooter theory that the defense has floated. Is it possible for a jury to convict a defendant if they believe that there really was an accomplice, but there's no evidence of who that person might be?
That's a great question, and the answer to that, Judy, is yes. Let me tell you, there are times actually when multiple defendants are charged with committing murder, and jurors have said, we're going to convict 2 out of 3, with the other third person actually sitting at the table. So if there is a person who is thought to be involved, but not identified, not even charged, and the jury says, well, we might not know who he is or she is, but here's the point. We have proof beyond a reasonable doubt, sir, that you committed the crime, and they can convict the defendant sitting at the table.
Wow.
All right, we're going to pause right there. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation and legal analysis of the Murdaugh murder trial, day 8, including evidence from Maggie Murdaugh's phone. We'll be right back.